Welcome back, Wrestling WWE fans. Tonight, we're diving into a battle that was more than just a clash inside the squared circle. It was a collision of legacies, a test of pride, and a war of spears that carried the weight of family, history, and the future of WWE. Roman Reigns stood across from Bron Breakker, not just as the tribal chief, but as a man fighting to protect a dynasty that has already been shaken to its core. Bron, the fiery son of wrestling royalty himself, walked into this night with something to prove, not only to Roman, but to the entire industry that has watched him climb with ferocity and hunger. Please like, share and subscribe for more WWE content. The tension backstage before the match was suffocating. Roman, usually calm and commanding, was seen pacing, almost unsettled. Some insiders whispered that this wasn't just about the match, but about the whispers of betrayal that continue to swirl around his family and the bloodline. Bron, on the other hand, carried himself with quiet determination, as though he had already prepared for a fight bigger than himself. When the bell rang, it wasn't just a contest of strength, it was a clash of two men who understood the stakes of being the face of family dynasties. The crowd knew they were about to witness more than a spectacle, they were about to witness a legacy-defining moment. Roman launched the first offensive, dominating early with his presence and sheer power. But Bron refused to back down, countering with a defiance that felt like he was channeling the spirit of his legendary bloodline. Every strike, every move carried the weight of a man who had spent his entire life in the shadow of greatness, determined to carve his own place. As the match went on, fans couldn't shake the thought that this was more than scripted drama. Roman's face told a story of a man fighting not just an opponent, but grief, betrayal, and the cracks forming in the empire he had spent years building. For Bron, his eyes told the story of a man desperate to prove that he wasn't just following in anyone's footsteps, but building a legacy of his own. The atmosphere grew heavier with every exchange. The crowd was electric, but backstage sources say the locker room was silent, with superstars watching closely, knowing they were witnessing the kind of match that changes careers forever. The spears became the centerpiece. Roman's spear, perfected over years of dominance, clashed with Bron's spear, a raw and thunderous strike that came from youth, power, and hunger. Every collision felt like two forces of nature meeting, shaking the very foundation of the arena. But this match wasn't just about strength. It was about the emotional scars both men carried. Roman carried the grief of losing control of the bloodline. Bron carried the weight of living up to the Steiner name while carving his own path. These burdens collided in the ring just as much as their bodies did. At one point, Roman went down hard after a devastating spear, and for a moment, the audience held its breath. Was this the end of the tribal chief? Was this the night Bron would finally topple a giant and mark the beginning of a new era? The uncertainty created a silence as powerful as any cheer. Yet Roman rose again, battered but unbroken. And when he glared across the ring at Bron, it wasn't just defiance. It was the look of a man unwilling to let go of his throne, no matter how much betrayal or scandal swirled around him. Bron, too, refused to give in. His resilience sent shockwaves through the arena. This wasn't a young talent overwhelmed by the moment. This was a warrior determined to make history, even if it meant destroying the man who had ruled WWE for nearly a decade. The crowd split in its loyalties. Some cried out for Roman, the face of dominance and tradition. Others roared for Bron, the hungry newcomer carrying the torch of change. It was more than a wrestling match. It was symbolic of the eternal struggle between the old guard and the new generation. Backstage, whispers grew louder. Some said Roman looked tired, carrying the grief of recent months, as though his heart wasn't fully in it anymore. Others said Bron's intensity was more than ambition, it was desperation, the desperation of a man who knew this was his moment, and moments like this don't come twice. The final sequence of spears shook the arena to its core. Roman and Bron collided mid-ring, both men laid out, both gasping for air, both unwilling to give in. For a moment, it was unclear who would rise first, who would seize destiny, and who would crumble under the pressure. When Roman rose, battered but standing tall, there was a mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief for those who still believed in the tribal chief. Heartbreak for those who saw Bron give everything and fall just short of rewriting history. After the match, sources say Roman didn't celebrate like he usually does. There was no smugness, no arrogance. Instead, there was a quiet nod, almost of respect, not just to Bron, but to the fight itself, to the understanding that the future is closer than he wants to admit. Bron, on the other hand, left the ring to a standing ovation. Though defeated, he left as a man transformed, as someone who had forced Roman Reigns to dig deeper than he had in years. And that kind of performance doesn't end in loss. It ends in legacy. The backstage energy after the match was intense. Some superstars expressed grief, saying they felt like they were watching the end of an era, that Roman's body looked tired and worn, his health maybe no longer matching his will. Others whispered scandal, questioning whether Roman could really hold his empire together much longer. As for Bron, he returned backstage broken physically but standing tall emotionally. His family, his legacy, his very name had been validated in front of the world. Sometimes, even in defeat, you win something far greater than a match. You win respect. And that's the story here, a match that wasn't just about spears, but about human fragility, about the cost of power, about betrayal, grief, and the weight of legacy. Two men entered that ring, but what they left behind was something that transcended wrestling. So as we close this chapter, let's reflect. Wrestling is about more than titles and wins. It's about loyalty, loss, and love for the craft. Roman and Bron reminded us of that truth. And whether you stand with the tribal chief or with the hungry breaker, you witnessed a moment that will echo in WWE history for years to come.